Greetings to everyone. In today's presentation, I'm going to touch upon modernism and modernity. People might think modernism and modernity are one and the same. But the fact is, modernity is a philosophical movement, whereas modernism is an aesthetic movement. Modernity influences modernism, but they are not the same. Why do we need to have this clarity, this understanding? Today, postmodern criticism is very famous. The scholars doing research in the field of literature, they apply postmodern criticism, postmodern interpretative techniques to interpret themes and issues and events. Here, at this point of time, it is imperative on our part that we got to have the background theoretical, philosophical understanding of postmodern criticism. We can't do justice in postmodern criticism without understanding the philosophical and theoretical foundations. Hence, I feel a discussion on modernism and modernity extremely important. One more important point is, modernism and modernity at the end of the day inadvertently contributed to the rise of colonialism. It is also the reason why colonialization, the otherization process started. We'll explain these things in this presentation. First of all, let's talk about modernism as such. If you are interested in postmodern criticism, as you all know, there are many versions of this postmodernism. Eagleton's version of postmodernism, Peter Barry's version of postmodernism, Lyotard's version of postmodernism, or it could be Frederick Jamson's version of postmodernism. Doesn't matter, what will be the versions you want to advocate. The theoretical base lies in understanding modernism and modernity. Peter Barry, in Beginning Theory, beautifully defines modernism in this way. Modernism is an aesthetic movement. It has dominated many different fields. I would say it's a multifaceted phenomena. It has actually dominated the fields such as art, culture, and painting. It started in the later part of 19th century. It went up to the first half of 20th century. There is a conflict here between modern worldviews and postmodern worldviews. To resolve this conflict, I thought the discussion very important. Let me start in this way. Let's talk about the timeline. Do you know why 1922, very remarkable in our history of English literature, in literary critical tradition, 1922, it has been quoted as a very important, significant period. There is something significant, something important happened during 1922. The reason is this. Do you know Ulysses by James Joyce and T.S. Eliot's Wasteland and Virginia Woolf's Jacob's Room? All these three beautiful pieces of literature produced during 1922. Hence, 1922, something remarkable, a kind of situation emerged in 1922, which actually resulted in these beautiful literary productions. Hence, we call this period a remarkable period in modernist literature. That's a period during which foundation laid for modernism. From 1922, if we go to 1927, 5 years later, to The Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, modern fiction, a collection of essays, wherein Virginia Woolf talks about what is modernism. She discusses the stream of consciousness techniques, talks about the operation of mind and how mind actually operates. She disapproves of traditional narratives, wherein the first thing presented first, the second thing second, and third thing third. Virginia Woolf says that at any given point of time, thousands of atoms pinch on my consciousness. If I were to present all the things which happened to me, then traditional narrative not going to rescue me. I got to actually follow a kind of narrative which is non-traditional, in a haphazard manner, stream of consciousness, impressionism. Here, there is an epistemological break. The epistemological break is, rather than how the world actually is, my focus is on how it appears to me. That's what the focus in most of the essays collected over there in modern fiction. Particularly in the second part, she talks about it. Remember, my dear friends, what's happening is not just limited to literature. As I said, it's an aesthetic movement which includes art, culture, and painting. If you go to painting, manifestos as Surrealism by Andrea Britton in 1924. How about sculpture? Picasso's Guernica in 1937. So these things point out one simple fact, that is, something remarkable, marvelous happening in this particular period, the first half of 20th century. It didn't actually happen within a particular place. It was not confined only in America, or it was not confined to the UK. It's a pan-European movement. It has actually swept across, throughout the world, different parts of the world. I would say Anglo-American world completely covered in this. The UK, the USA, and the rest of the world. Innovation, revolution, experimentation. The statement that it is a pan-European movement, there is a problem in this statement. Even I have certain issues with this. We'll try to address these issues later on. You would understand the clue here is, when I try to look at this as a pan-European movement, I try to bring in the whole canvas. I am suggesting that Europe at the center, the Eurocentric worldview for which the start point is this. But obviously, it is a multifaceted phenomena on which there is no doubt. Do you know the kinds of writers contributed to this phenomena? Writers across different parts of the globe. From the UK, Virginia Woolf. From the USA, T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound. And if you move over to Ireland, Samuel Beckett. From Europe, Kafka, who is a German. From Russia, Slovakia. From Spain, Italy, and Picasso, a Spanish, and Andrea Brito, again a French. So all these people contributed to this movement. If you look at the writers, there are painters, writers, thinkers, and sculptors. What is the credo of this movement? The credo, the slogan is very simple. It says, new and make it new. This is how Ezra Pound defines it. New, innovate, and make it new. What happens here is innovation and experimentation. Kant, sapere aude in German, dare to know, be fearless. This is Immanuel Kant's contribution. And there are certain distinctions we should understand in this particular point. We have paleomodernism and neo-modernism. And we have low modernism and new high modernism. When I say paleomodernism, I talk about old modernism. In paleomodernism, the structure, the presentation, organization are new. Structure is new, presentation new, organization new. The best examples, T.S. Eliot's writings and Joyce's writings can be classified under paleomodernism. Whereas new modernism, we have Virginia Woolf, completely new. Structure, presentation, and organization. Here, in new modernism, Virginia Woolf is, remarkably new in structure, presentation, and organization. Also, she is new in terms of content. Whereas T.S. Eliot and Joyce, if you look at the content, it's not original. The themes are actually drawn from Greek literature. This distinction you can find in a work written by Henry Lavin, the name of which is actually Refraction. It's a collection of essays wherein Lavin talks about these distinctions. How can we understand high modernism and low modernism? High modernism, again, T.S. Eliot and Joyce can be quoted as examples. Low modernism, Joyce's writings can be quoted as examples. If you like to know certain examples to understand the distinction between high and low modernism, in high modernism, the great themes taken up for discussion, great themes related to human consciousness and the developments taken up for discussion. In low modernism, actually, I'm sorry to present this, actually, James Joyce's writing, you will find lots of instances of obscenity, particularly the letter written by James Joyce to his wife in 1909, wherein the F word keeps occurring again and again, which is an instance of actually low modernism. What about Ulysses? Though Ulysses is quoted as the most quoted novel of 20th century, according to Random Publishing House, but there are certain limitations to this particular perspective because it was banned a number of times before the ban was actually revoked. So there are lots of examples of even obscenity in Ulysses. Okay, from literature for a moment, if you look at paintings, I talked about some of the painters here, but here there are no less than 4 schools: Impressionism and Post-Impressionism, then Surrealism and Cubism. You will find these 4 schools wherein you will find experimentation done. There are 2 things we should understand. They question the solidity of the real and the reliability of the perception. You will find the visible brushstrokes. You will find the casual way of presenting things as things actually stand or as things actually perceived by these painters. Now, if you look at modernity, as I said, modernity is a philosophical movement which has actually influenced modernism, but both are different. It's a philosophical, cultural movement, but modernism is an aesthetic movement. Now, to understand modernity, we need to actually look at the timeline. If you start with the Antiquity period and following Antiquity period, we have Dark Ages from 6th to 10th century. And after Dark Ages, we have Middle Ages, 1000 to 1500. That 500 years, that's 1000 to 1500, it's an age of faith. It's an age where church was having so much of control on our thinking. All activities controlled, conditioned by the church. So that period is called Middle Ages. And then after Middle Ages, we have modernity, that is 1500 to 1789. That's a period which is called period of Renaissance. People started questioning the influence of church. People started questioning the irrationality. People started believing more in individualism, experimentation of life. People started taking charge of their own individual lives. So, in that period, I'm talking about the period called modernity, or modernism, or the period of enlightenment, there is an assault. There's an assault on the church. It's an assault on the values promoted by the church. People started questioning it, and people started emphasizing on rationality, science, knowledge, self, and individuality. You will have plenty of examples for this particular discourse in the writings of Klages. Klages' remarkable work, Literary Theory for the Perplexed Mind, is a wonderful resource wherein we have lots of resources for this particular discussion. So Klages talks about the conflict existed at that point of time between individual perception and the perception held by the church. The tension and friction existing between these two, beautifully presented. And Klages talked about rationality, truth, and progress, and people could look at things as they are. So much of emphasis on individual freedom and individual liberty. Now, when we put so much of focus on science and rationality, reason itself, and knowledge, the question is, whose science it is, whose rationality it is, for which the answer is, it's the rationality advocated by Europe, which resulted in Eurocentric approach. And this Eurocentric approach later influenced the process of authorization, inferiorization. People coming from areas other than this, not considered to be capable of thinking, capable of understanding responsibilities of this world, capable of exercising their faculty of mind. So this inferiorization or authorization started there. Hence, I would strongly say that this particular view has become, or this approach has become, a theoretical base for colonialization at a later point of time. Hence, to sum up, we started with different versions of postmodernism. To understand these different versions of postmodernism, we got to have a theoretical base. The theoretical base is modernism and modernity. These two are not the same. One influences the other, but they are different. And we have actually modernism. Modernism covers several areas, not just limited to literature. It extends itself to art and sculpture and so on and so forth. But there is modernity, which is a philosophical movement which influences modernism. And then as a result of this modernism, we have enlightened period. And enlightened period, unfortunately, resulted in promoting Eurocentric approach. And as a result of this Eurocentric approach, right now we have colonialization. So Eurocentric approach is a theoretical base for understanding colonialization. Okay, with which we stop this presentation. Then in my next presentation, I'll talk about colonialization, post-colonial theories, and then postmodern and post-structural theories. So these things will be discussed in the coming days. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.